Welcome back to KeZaka Stokvel Insights. Before the break, we profiled Precious Women Organization, a collective of female entrepreneurs dedicated to uplifting each other across industries, focusing on financial support, skills development, and so much more. Joining me now is our resident expert, Thabiso Masudubele, to share insight on how groups like Precious Women Organization can scale up while staying true to their mission. Thabiso, thank you very much for joining us for another jam-packed week of Stokvel and Burial Societies. I really love this group. It seems like they are a funding pool for businesses. So what is it about them? What are some of the unique features that make them stand out?
I think I share the same excitement about this group with you and Ananto. I think what this group shows us is it shows us the potential that Stokvels have. And I think some of the unique features about this group are issues of, identifying opportunities and potential, but not only identifying them, doing something about them. So these groups, they were faced with challenges and they realized that they've actually got the solution amongst themselves. So these are the type of groups that we encourage people to think about. And I think what we always try to do is to show people what potential Stokvels have. So here you've got a group of women who in their own right are entrepreneurs. So they each have their own businesses. And we always talk about the challenge of funding. You always have groups saying we want to start businesses, but there's no funding and so on. This group realized that, even though it's a challenge getting funding from outside, amongst ourselves, we can actually contribute. So as opposed to contributing money, and then when it's your turn to get all those contributions, you go and entertain yourself, which is fine. But they decided that you can then use that money that you get from your group to grow your business. So you use it towards the growth of your business. And what that does, it means that each and every business within that group is going to grow. But not only does each and every business in the group grow, but the group itself is going to grow. Because what it then does also is that when you've got other entrepreneurs who have the same challenge of raising funding, they look to this group and they realize, business she was able to buy that other machine. So that group works. Now I want to be part of something that works and that grows. And remember, we always speak about how do Stokvels market themselves. So you market yourself with the good things that you do. So this group has done a really good job of identifying the opportunity, realizing what the problem is, but coming with a solution that's helped to grow the group. And I think on the current path that they are, we see good things for this particular group.
For any other Stokvel that may be inspired by their current business model, how would sustainability be threatened in this case, for instance, if you're lending to each and every single member?
Look, I think, and that's something that happens a lot with Stokvels, but something unfortunately that also happens is that sometimes people are unable to pay back money that they've taken. So that's the biggest risk, I suppose, that money goes out, it doesn't come back. And then remember, groups were formed based on relationships and so on. And so we've seen a lot of groups where, there's a group currently in Potchefstroom where they've taken the chairperson to the police station because the chairperson took money, didn't bring it back. So, but there are ways and means to make sure that you can control those sorts of things. So you start introducing it in the constitution, things like contracts, things like surety. You've got to then look at how formal contracts are done. So if we're giving Nonto, who's a member of the group, money, we've got to look at, can Nonto pay that money? So, how can Nonto pay? So, some of the things that the banks do, I know some people don't like it, but some of those things become necessary to look at on a monthly, how much money does Nonto's business make? Will she be able to afford, paying back that money on a monthly basis, or will she pay it back as a lump sum? So you've got to thoroughly make sure that Nonto will be in a position to pay that money. But also the other option, over and above just lending the money out, is that, you've got groups that say every month we contribute, let's say 5,000 Rand and there's 10 of us. So every month there's a pot of 50,000 Rand. So instead of, that 50,000 Rand, what the group can do, what we encourage, especially for those who are business minded, is to say, you then put it in, it becomes a provision in the Constitution to dictate how that 50,000 rand is used. So when it's your turn to get that 50,000 rand, you've got to have presented a plan that says, with the 50,000 rand, I'm going to be able to buy another sewing machine or another, soft drinks, fridge, or whatever it is that's going to help to grow your business. And in that way, we then, it's almost like a peer review mechanism where each entrepreneur is holding the other accountable and saying, we're going to use this money to grow our businesses. And that deals with that issue of scarcity of funding or the difficulty in raising funding. But not that it will make it easier, because you're still going to do those checks to say you have to make sure that Nonto, when she gets that 50,000, on paper she said she's going to get assets for the business, and then you see Nonto in a new expensive dress. So you don't want those kind of things happening. So you've got to have those checks and balances to make sure that these things grow. But it's also important, and we always raise this with groups, that always be on the same page with your intentions, with your goals, and with your visions. Because it's only once you're all on the same page that you don't necessarily need to police each other, because you've got the same drive and the same ambition. And that's something that we see with this particular group. They're all entrepreneurs. Everyone wants their individual business to grow, and everyone wants their fellow sisters' business to grow.
I think before we take a break, I would love for us to look at who gets to make the decision of who deserves this amount and whether they're able to pay it back, and whether you would rather outsource that skill set or identify the professionals within the group, as you always mention. So please do stay tuned. We will be back after this short break.